Keychron has released quite a number of Q series keyboards to date, and the latest one is this one, the Keychron Q5, a 96% mechanical keyboard, aka an 1800 layout. If you want a keyboard this size with a reasonably low asking price as well as a pretty good feature set, keep on watching this review of the Q5. The biggest selling point of the Q5 is definitely the 1800 layout compared to the Q1 with a 75% layout or the Q2 with a 65% layout. It's essentially a full-size keyboard just without the nav key cluster. Beyond that, it has pretty much the same feature set as other Q series keyboards, including a hot swap PCB, screw-in stabilizer, Gateron switches, a full CNC aluminum case, as well as a double gasket design. It's called as such because aside from the gasket mounting system of the keyboard itself, it also has silicone pads in between the top and bottom case to reduce the keyboard's pinging, a complaint that was very prominent with the first version of the Keychron Q1. As for pricing, the barebone version of the Q5 starts at only $165 If you want the fully assembled model instead, which is this one right here, you only need to pay $20 more. If you want to add a knob to the top right corner, you only need to add on $10. Now let's move on to the positives of the Keychron Q5, starting with the typing feel, which could be a good or a bad thing depending on your personal preference. Even though the gasket mounting system of the Q5 offers quite a bit of flex when you apply pressure to it, it still feels a little bit stiff to type on, which could be due to the steel plate of the Q5. That being said, it doesn't feel as stiff as a tray-mounted or a top-mounted keyboard. In fact, the whole keyboard feels quite even. There is no one area where the typing feel is stiffer than the other. Thanks to the gasket mounting system of the Q5, you also get quite a clean sound profile. As you're typing on the Q5, you don't really hear too much case pinging out of the keyboard to an extent. There are some caveats to this, and I'll get to it later on in this review. Nonetheless, the double-shot PBT OSA keycaps, which is basically OEM height keycaps with a more rounded look, as well as the Gateron G Pro Brown switch on this keyboard, make for a reasonably talky sound profile. If you switch out the Gateron Brown switches for a talkier switch such as say the U40 or even the Anubis switch, I'm sure you can get an even deeper pitch out of this keyboard. Next, we have the QMK and VR compatibility of the Keychron Q5. This is really one of the biggest selling points of Keychron's Q series keyboards because the Q here stands for QMK. With this software, you can easily change the key mapping of the keyboard, and it's really a feature that every custom keyboard should have. The stock screw-in stabilizers of the Q5 are actually pretty darn good as well. It does have a little bit of ticking out of the box, but for a pre-built keyboard, it's really quite impressive how well Keychron managed to loop the stab wires. Last but certainly not least is the value proposition of the Q5. Again, this starts at only $165 for the barebone version, and for a keyboard this size, that's really good value for money. And if you only top up $20, you get these full set keycaps as well as Gateron switches, and you're really getting your money's worth there because I don't think you can find any switches or keycaps that cost only $20 together. Granted, the Q5 does have its fair share of shortcomings, starting with the sound profile again. Although it does have quite a clean sound profile, there is also a little bit of case ping still, especially on the corners of this keyboard. The backspace, for example, does ping quite a bit, and you can hear this for yourself at the end of this video in the sound test. While this keyboard has 3 layers of foam, which consists of a plate foam and 2 layers of foam on the bottom case, they're a little bit too thin, especially on the bottom case, which doesn't help a lot in sound dampening. But I do have to say though, in normal use like in an office environment or somewhere with a little bit of ambient noise, the pinging isn't that noticeable, and it is certainly not quite as bad as the first Keychron Q1. Another possible shortcoming of the Q5 is the layout itself. Yes, it is almost full size, but some folks still want the nav cluster, and not having it here may be a deal breaker to them. As for myself, I prefer a smaller layout such as a 65% keyboard, especially with the arrow cluster that is just to the right and not pushed down, and it just doesn't look symmetrical on the Q5. All things considered, the Keychron Q5 is still a good keyboard, especially if you want an 1800 layout. Even though it's not my cup of tea, it could be yours. Plus, the Q5 also has all of the features that make Keychron's Q series keyboards so popular, especially the modding potential. To eliminate the pinging of the keyboard, for example, you can either do the PE sheet mod or even the tape mod on the bottom of the PCB for an even deeper sound profile. It's really up to your imagination and how much effort you want to put into this keyboard, but again, from only $165 you could do a lot worse. And that is our review of the Keychron Q5. It is available for purchase right now on Keychron's online store, and here's a sound test of the Q5 completely stock. Like this video if you like it, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and always stay tuned for more good stuff to come here on this channel and nextshift.com.